We're going to continue now with security perspectives from Colombia, Central America and Mexico. There was a preceding meeting which has only just taken place in Panama. It took place between June 21st and 22nd, which drew together regional experts from civil society and academia. And the panel we have now is going to share their perspectives and also, I believe, what came out of the debates at that meeting in Panama. So again, we have a very distinguished panel here. I'll introduce them to you just before they speak. So first of all, we have Ana Glenda Taguer, who is the Latin American Regional Director at Interpeace. She has been with Interpeace, an international peace-visiting NGO, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, since 1999, so she's been with them a long time, and has served as the Latin American Regional Director since 2005. She's also a member of the Interpeace Strategic Management Team that manages its operations across the world. So Anna, over to you.
Hello everyone. I will try to talk, I hope you listen to me, because sometimes the microphone is very hard. Initially I was asked to talk about security in relation with violent extremists, exclusively in the Central America context. However, after the meeting we had in Panama, we were trying to assess the situation in Colombia, Central America, and Mexico, and we decided to try to bring you here some joint perspective of these different countries. Let me share some type of reflections before to go into the problematic more specifically with the case of Central America. First, we were talking about the link between organized crime and terrorism. This is international recognized that is the most serious threat to the international level. But we began with the debate about the concept of terrorism, because in this part of the world, maybe it's different sometimes the perception in the people about the concept with what really meaning with our type of situations. And we must distinguish between when we are talking about terrorist groups and when we are talking about terrorist actions that are used like a method or a tool. We have some type of examples in the region from some guerrillas that operate with some specific acts of terrorism, but don't mean that they are terrorist groups. Then for us it's very important to have the difference, especially when you have some type of processes that are more dialogue processes between governments and these groups. Then this was one of the big concern and the big debate that we had. The other point it was the link that exists between organized crime and terrorism. We were talking a lot about it, and we found different types of possibilities. You have groups of organized crime unrelated with terrorism, organized crime groups engaged in terrorist activities, terrorist groups that engage in criminal activities to finance their political ends, terrorist groups who trade in goods with organized crime, and terrorist organizations not funded by crime. Then you have a long list of these different possibilities that you can have. But even when these links between terrorist and organized crime exist, it's still important to distinguish the purpose and the strategies against them in each case, because if not, sometimes the problem could be not the specific situation of terrorism, but the situation of the answer from the state. Within this big picture about what we were debating in the workshop in Panama, I will try to frame a little bit the Central America specific context, because after that my colleague will talk about Colombia and my other colleague about specifically the case of Mexico. The security crisis that currently exists in Central America is rooted in the conjunction conjunction of several factors. One is the lack of common definition of security, and therefore lack of clarity about the security policies that we should have, but policies that respond to a democratic system, because this is part of the problem. If you don't have a clear definition about who is the last beneficiary of the security, then you have a trouble. And sometimes the conception of security is one in the states, another in the civil society in general. And it's why we had a lot of hard hands policies going on into the region that are giving a lot of violence of human rights. The second one is the acceptance of the doctrines from other countries without taking into account the real threats that we have in the region, because we have some type of import agendas that are coming from other type of threats for other countries, not specifically for our countries. And this sometimes is a big threat for us in the case of the countries that really leaves the problems that are for other countries and not for our country. The other is the weakness of the democratic state, which is expressed in corruption, high officials, law enforcement officers, and in some countries also in the armed forces and the intelligence police. Here is the case of the impunity, that is a big issue in general in some of the countries of the region, especially the case of Guatemala, that even we have one international commission against impunity from UN, because the necessity we have in the country to have this type of support. The other is the economic structure having large informal sectors are likely to build illegal parallel structures and all the interests that are around that. The drug trafficking is a transnational phenomenon, but the efforts against it are made at the national level. And this is a problem, because we have a problematic that is a regional problem, and we are giving a treatment that is a more national focused answer. Central America and the Caribbean is on the road between the main production centers, that is Los Andes, and consumption, that is US and Canada. And they are transit countries, primary, but they have also become places of production and consumption. The growth of the violence, we have homicide rates in Guatemala, Salvador, and Honduras, recorded very high, like 50 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. But you can see at the same time countries like Nicaragua, in which you have 20 per 100,000 inhabitants. Then it's very different. And also, we have right now one specific case in El Salvador, in which is going on dialogue. I put dialogue in this way because it's a dialogue between the youth gangs and the government. And I put it this way because it's not something that is open. It's supposedly going on, but the government is not accepted, and the youth gangs at the same time not accepted that they are making some type of negotiation. But this type of negotiation supposedly at least gives to El Salvador a rate that is like in a little bit of half of what it was the number that they had before. We also have a small arms proliferation in the region. The region have different types of violence. The two that are more knowledge around the world are, one is the youth violence, that is wider, that is just talk about youth gangs, and the women violence. We, in the case of Guatemala specifically, we have the case of the feminicidios, that is, I think in English is feminicides. I'm not sure if this is the exactly way to pronounce, but this is the way in which a lot of women are dying just because their condition or her condition of gender. The link that states are creating between many issues in the security agenda with transnational threats, like terrorism and organized crime, has made the problem bigger. The states are not analyzing whether those links are real, but they consider them as a threat to the state itself, and forget about human security, criminalizing groups of the population, like it's the case of the youths, especially youths that have a tattoo is typically criminalized, and violating human rights when security is supposed to be at risk, like it's especially now the case of Honduras after the coup d'etat, when there is a group that is against the government, and this is looking like a terrorist group. And this is why human security is important to this context. The subject to security should be the human being, not the state. And when the human beings is the good to protect, the management of the security threats should be different. And because this implies the strengthening of the democratic structures of the state and not only the security bodies as is right now. The state should use direct force only as an exception, not as a norm, and the respect of the rule of law that is necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. We're going to move straight on to our next speaker. Father Francisco Garou, who's better known as Pacho, is head of the Jesuits in Colombia. Prior to this, he was director of CINEP in Bogota and director of the Development and Peace Program in Magdalena Medio. Over the last years, he's been an advisor to a number of international organizations on issues of peace, justice, and development. So over to you, Pacho.
Good afternoon to everybody. And let me give you a piece of what is going on in Colombia at the present moment. As you know, for 50 years now, we have guerrillas in Colombia. The FARC and the ELN people, they are fighting the Colombian government and the state. The basic reason of the struggle is a problem of land. Small farmers have been expropriated on about 6 million hectares as the Colombian government recognized. In September 11, the ideology of counterterrorism came to Colombia, because before we were discussing about this practical internal conflict we had there. Because of that, our army was multiplied by 5, and the militarization of the country was increased in a very, very high level. I have to say that during the same time, the Colombian economy is being increasing also as one of the Latin American countries with the best results on economic development. During the last administration, the conflict in Colombia was extremely hard, and during that time, for 15 years, we started and we could keep doing a process of development and peace in the central part of Colombia, which is called the Magdalena Medio Program for Peace and Development. But our idea is being to plant the development, to plant, with all the communities, everybody, the transformation of an area which has been very conflictual. And this is an area as big as Belgium. And we tried and keep conversations with the entrepreneurs, the local politicians, the women organizations, peasants, small farmers, fishermen, but also with the guerrilla, the paramilitary, the military, inviting everybody to go together. This is an initiative of the civil society, inviting everybody. There is no future if we don't go together. Going together means that we have to change, all of us, in order to participate in this sort of effort. I have to say that